I'm not quite sure what prolific on Twitter means, but I am on Twitter. So I'm going to start with this picture. Now, it might look like just tatty old leather boots and a flag, but these are actually both made from human skin. Now, this isn't the kind of creepy trophies of a serial killer. This is actually a piece of bioart by an artist called Andrew Krasnow. Now, bioart is when artists use biological materials, including human and animal tissues. Humans have been kind of fascinated by creative meddling with nature for decades. Many people will be familiar with some of the fantastical experiments documented in works of fiction, such as H.G. Wells's Island of Dr. Moreau and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. But it's not until the 20th century, at least the last half of the 20th century, when the bioengineering techniques have started to come into place that have almost made these sort of things begin to be possible. Now, it's quite hard to forget this image from 1996 of Charles Vacanti's ear mouse. Now, this isn't a piece of bioart. This is actually kind of real science, so to speak. And it appears that there's a human ear under the skin of the mouse. It wasn't actually a human ear. It was a cartilage scaffold in the shape of a human ear. But this kind of really startling image inspired a kind of wave of artists to think about the ways that they can use kind of biological materials in more inventive ways and take advantage of these new technologies. So it doesn't take a huge leap of imagination to see where Stellark got his idea from. He's an Australian bioartist who uses his own body as an artistic medium, and he's implanted a scaffold with his own kind of stem cells in it under the skin of his arm. And he's been working on this for several years. I met him the other day, and he's talking about how he wants to put a microphone in this ear and connect it to the internet so that people can listen to what his arm ear is hearing wherever he goes. But it's a fascinating story, and he actually nearly lost his arm when he had it implanted because it's an unnecessary operation, so to speak. But not all bioartists use their own body as an artistic medium. There are some who just like to create beautiful hybrids. A Brazilian bioartist called Eduardo Catch, I think that's how you pronounce his name, created a hybrid flower using his own DNA mixed with that of a petunia, which he's named originally Edunia. There are also kind of interesting performative pieces using cells. Now, this is a piece by Kathy High called Blood Wars, where she takes the blood of two different participants. She separates out the white blood cells, and then she dyes them different colours and puts them into a Petri dish to watch them kind of fight it out between them. And she records all of this with a microscope and time-lapse photography. And the idea is it's a kind of survival of the fittest immune systems. Some of the more complex pieces of bioart involve, as they refer to it, as wet work, but that sounds a bit like the glory box that was mentioned earlier. And this is where artists take advantage of kind of stem cell research and some of the more complex equipment, such as bioreactors. As with other technologies, these sorts of things have kind of come down in price and become more accessible to artists. And unlike with scientific research, artists don't have to have quite the same scientific rigors, so it's easier for them to gain access to some of these things. An example of this is Julia Riodica's hymen project, where she actually took cells, her own vaginal cells, and grew them into synthesized hymens. Another project of this ilk is the semi-living worry dolls. Now, these take inspiration from Guatemalan worry dolls that children keep under their pillows, but instead of fabric, this is an art collective called Symbiotica. They swapped a kind of biodegradable scaffold, which was seeded with I think it was pig stem cells. And during the course of the exhibition, these cells kind of grew to create these kind of fleshy, doll-like structures, which I don't think you'd want to have them under your pillow necessarily, but it's an interesting idea, and I'll just show you a close-up of one of said dolls. I think that's probably something that's going to make you worry rather than relieve you of your worries. But clearly, if we're using animal and human tissues, this is a very ethically charged area. And there's lots of regulation around it, particularly with human tissue. And there's very few galleries that can actually show some of this work, and most of them are attached to large kind of academic institutions like the Wellcome collection or the Hunterian. But there is one private gallery in London called GV Art that can display these. They have a license from the Human Tissue Authority to show human tissues, obviously. But it raises so many fascinating questions, and I don't really have time to answer them here, but I'd be more than happy to talk about these afterwards. But I wanted to raise a few just, as a kind of discussion point. But, is it worse to display human tissue than animal tissue? Are you shocked by seeing those boots made out of human skin but wearing leather shoes? Humans can actually give consent in a way that animals can't. Is it worse to display living animal or human cells than it is dead ones? Do you feel more uncomfortable seeing those semi-living worry dolls, which are made out of pig cells, and they're living, than you do, again, whatever, eating meat or wearing shoes? And what if the cells come from an animal or a human who's still alive? I mean, you can actually be a living donor, particularly with stem cells and even skin samples. You can donate while you're still alive. So, are there still ethical issues there? And is it a waste of these tissues to use it for artistic purposes rather than for scientific pursuit, when lots of different research projects need these tissues for their work? And finally, is it just kind of sensationalism? And that's something that's often thrown at the gallerists at GV Art. But one of the kind of key concerns for many of the bioartists is what to do with these kind of semi-living things at the end of the exhibition. And so what Symbiotica have done, and they're the ones who created the Guatemalan worry dolls, is they've created this killing ritual. And it's absolutely nowhere nearly as exciting as that looks. It actually looks quite prosaic. It's just contaminating the little fleshy structures because they can't go back into the lab. So what they do is they gather the curators of the gallery and they gather some of the visitors together and they contaminate the artworks, they touch them, and they start discussing, get people involved in the ethical decision-making process, and also discussing some of the science behind it, helping them understand about some of the techniques such as stem cell research and bioengineering. Now, I just wanted to finish with a quote from one of the members of the Symbiotica Art Collective, called Ayanat Zur, who says, "Artists make the work visible, but don't shoot the messenger. A lot of research takes place hidden away in labs that we don't know about, but artists make that visible. This makes them very vulnerable to criticism, and it's very easy to make them the scapegoat." Thank you.